Hello! So, in honor of Pisces season, I thought it would be appropriate to share some of the books that have made me get into the feels, made me shed a few tears, get a little emotional, and yeah, they were great reads. They've stuck with me ever since I read these books, and I thought I would share with you guys. So the first one is actually a genre that I don't really dabble in, which is romance, but this book just did me so good. Like, it was a journey. It's called The Light We Lost by Jill Santopolo, and it follows the love story of two characters. We meet them when they're in school in New York City, and they actually meet on 9/11, so that kind of sets the tone and intensity of kind of the rest of their relationship. And it's one of those books where we follow the characters throughout their formative years. Like, we meet them in college, and we follow them throughout their 20s and 30s and beyond. And I love books like that. It's probably my favorite kind of style of book, is when we're with the characters from beginning to end, and you feel like you've kind of grown up with them and see them evolve and change. And yeah, I loved this story. You see the characters kind of weave in and out of each other's lives, which makes it kind of interesting and also agonizing, because the whole time you're like, I just want them to be together. And the ending was absolutely brutal, hence why it made me cry. I literally pulled an all-nighter reading this, because just the last quarter, you just want to get to the end and figure out what happens, how this is going to end, and so you just kind of want to speed read. So I just remember being in my room, like, sobbing, but like silently sobbing, because I didn't want to wake up my parents or, you know, make them think that something was going on at like 5 in the morning. But oh my God, this was an awesome book. I highly recommend it. It'll suck you right in. Even just the beginning was like, throughout the whole thing, it's a very plot driven book, and quite fast. I wouldn't say like fast paced, but it's like a page turner for sure. Like, you just want to keep on reading. So yeah, highly recommend it. It was a great read, and now thinking about it, it just kind of makes me makes me want to read a little bit more romance, because I just loved it. I loved it. So with that, kind of switching gears a little bit, I have more of a slower pace read, and that's John Boyne's The Heart's Invisible Furies. I also loved this book, and this one is especially close to my heart, because every time I look at this book, it reminds me of a certain moment in time in my life when I read this. And I was on exchange. I went to Edinburgh, and that was just a lovely time. It feels like ages ago, and it feels like a movie, but this is when I read this. So every time I look at it, it just makes me extra sentimental and gets me more into the feels because of where I was in that time. But it was a stunning read. I know that I've seen other people say that this was a, like, not boring, but just like a slower paced read, especially at the beginning. Like, it only starts to get, not that it's not good at the beginning, don't get me wrong, but I think the author does a really good job of situating us in the story and doing a lot of character development and building. And then the story, kind of the plot itself, actually starts to pick up the further along we get in the book. So it's about a young boy's life. Like, we meet him, well, we actually meet his mom. So it's set in Ireland, which I also really liked. So it's set in Ireland, and this young gal, she's 16, she gets pregnant, and she's completely exiled from her town in the outskirts of Dublin. And she ends up giving her son up for adoption, and her son, Cyril, is the main character in this book and who we follow throughout his life, throughout his adoptive, when he gets adopted, and we get to meet his adoptive family and him going to college. And, you know, it deals with identity, sexuality, just boyhood, and it's just such a beautifully written book, so nuanced. It's like if you were taking a beautifully scenic walk with a really interesting man, and he's telling you about his life and his journey through his boyhood, young adult years, and coming into, it's like a coming of age story. And so by the end of the walk, you just want to give this man a big hug, and you're so thankful that he shared this beautiful tale with you. And that's kind of how I felt reading this. Like I was just walking along being like, oh, this is so lovely. This is so beautiful. I can't wait to see where this goes. And then it gets a little sad, and then you start to get really attached to this person, and by the end you're just crying. So that's this one. It's like I said, you have to give it some time, you have to be a little bit patient, but it does pick up and you end up establishing this beautiful bond with the main character, Cyril. So it is well worth the read and sticking with it, in my opinion. Okay, then the next book honestly needs no introduction. As soon as I lift it up, you're gonna be like, of course, like this has to be included in every one of these videos. And that is A Little Life. Ooh, this book, I am no exception. I too cried like there's no tomorrow, just like every other booktuber who has reviewed this video or reviewed this book, talked about this book. Yeah, like it destroyed me. I still think about this book. I read it last year and I think about this book at least once a week. Like it's such a emotionally gripping story that it's unforgettable. Like once you read it, you will not be able to escape this world, and it'll stick with you forever. I know that sounds really dramatic, but boy, did this book just affect me like no book has ever affected me before. I'm not going to go into detail because if you're at all interested, I'm sure you've seen all those other booktube videos, as have I, talking about this, but it basically follows the life of 4 young men. They meet in college and we follow them throughout their adult years. Like I said, you may sense a theme here. I love those kinds of books. And yeah, it's just, the author does such a good job of making you fall in love with these characters and then just like ripping them out of your heart and soul, and just like crushing them right in front of you, and you're just like, no! That's what this is like. So trigger warning, it does talk about some incredibly heavy themes and issues like self-harm, sexual and emotional abuse, suicide. It's super heavy, so do your research before you pick this guy up. If you're like in your early teens, maybe wait a little bit to read this. But yes, I had to include this because, oof, this one really just made me cry a lot. So yeah. And then the last one is another, I dropped it. The last one is another romance book, but it's also a family drama, and that is Kristen Hanna's The Great Alone. This was a beautiful story. It deals with a family that moves to Alaska, and mom and dad and their young daughter, and we follow the daughter's life throughout her adult years, and it's very plot driven because there's, like I said, issues with her family, and we follow that when she's young, and then we follow her throughout her life when she moves to this other parts of this, I think it's Washington, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a stunning read. The romance element was absolutely beautiful. Again, the last like 50 pages destroyed me. I think I didn't pull an all-nighter for this one, but I stayed up really late finishing it because I had to know how it ended, and I was just a mess. And I was just like sad, ugly crying. But yes, it was a stunning read. I also love books that take place in like interesting locations. Like I loved reading about Alaska. The author does an amazing job of describing what life is like there. And it just kind of enriched the story, in my opinion, and it made it that much better. So I highly recommend this if you want kind of like a journey story mixed in with family drama, mixed in with romance, and you're in for a good time. So I highly recommend this one. It was great. And I also read it on exchange, so it's extra special. So yeah, those are the books that have made me cry. And I don't think it has to do with the fact that I'm a Pisces. I think most people are gonna read these and feel some type of way. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any books that have made you cry, and I'm gonna write them down and add them to my list, because sometimes you're just in the mood for those kind of books, you know? So yeah, I will leave you with that, and subscribe, and yeah, I will see you soon. Bye.